The moment her sister swung the heavy hand across the ornate mirror, shattering it into countless jagged fragments, a sharp metallic sound pierced the quiet of the house. Glass splintered across the floor, tiny shards catching the light and scattering it like fragments of a broken sun. The girl froze, staring at the destruction with a mixture of shock and disbelief. The mirror had been more than just a surface for reflection. It had been a witness to her life, a silent companion that reflected her joys, her fears, and the subtle expressions that only she could see in herself. Now that companion was gone, destroyed by the jealousy in spite of someone who could not bear to see her possess even a small sense of identity or pride. Her sister stood over the wreckage, chest heaving, eyes glinting with triumph. "You think you are better than me," she spat, her voice sharp and accusatory, "but you are nothing without this." The girl felt a surge of humiliation ripple through her, the intended sting of her sister's cruelty biting deep into her spirit. She had been so careful, so measured in her movements and words, and yet her sister had found a way to humiliate her publicly, to strip her of a familiar reflection and force her to confront herself in a new, distorted reality. Kneeling among the shards, she felt an unexpected chill, not just from the cold touch of the broken glass, but from a deeper, more mysterious sensation. As her fingers brushed over a particularly clear fragment, she noticed something unusual. The shard did not merely reflect her image, it seemed to shimmer with faint light, distorting her reflection in ways that were almost imperceptible, yet undeniably there. It was subtle at first, a flicker of movement behind her eyes in the glass, a shadow that should not have been, a shape that seemed to pulse faintly with intention. Her heart quickened, and though fear gripped her, curiosity stirred more strongly. She realized that the destruction of the mirror, though meant to harm and unsettle her, had instead opened a new door. Something in her gut whispered that this was not mere cruelty, it was a signal, an invitation, or perhaps a warning. Her sister's act, fueled by envy, had inadvertently revealed a hidden layer of reality. The shards, scattered across the floor, each seemed to hold a fragment of a story, a piece of a truth that she could not yet fully grasp. She carefully collected the pieces, examining them under the soft glow of candlelight. The edges cut her skin as she handled them, but she paid no heed. Every cut was a reminder that discovery often required courage and endurance. As she studied the fragments, a sense of awareness grew within her. The mirror's destruction was not merely an end, it was a beginning. The familiar reflection she had lost would return, not in the way she expected, but in a form far more revealing and profound. The shards hinted at things unseen, truths hidden behind the veneer of daily life and family dynamics. They were whispering secrets in a language she was only beginning to understand, and she felt, with quiet certainty, that the mirror's breaking was no accident, nor was it entirely the work of her sister. The humiliation lingered, heavy and bitter, but it was accompanied by a spark of anticipation. Beneath the shards lay possibility, a path toward revelations that her sister, nor anyone else, could have foreseen. And in that realization she found a strange sense of empowerment, the knowledge that even in destruction, a new kind of vision awaited, one capable of revealing truths powerful enough to shake the very foundation of those who had sought to harm her. Even among the broken shards scattered across the floor, her eyes caught something extraordinary. The jagged fragments, though sharp and disjointed, reflected not only her face but also subtle, fleeting images that did not belong. In one piece, a corner shimmered faintly with an almost imperceptible glow, as though it were trying to communicate something beyond a simple reflection. Another shard seemed to distort the room behind her, bending shadows into shapes that hinted at movement, secret gestures, or hidden objects she had never noticed before. She leaned closer, her pulse quickening, and noticed a pattern emerging, a sequence of glints that formed shapes reminiscent of symbols, letters, or markings she had seen only in passing, in old family manuscripts or whispered stories from her mother. Her mind raced as she carefully picked up each fragment, holding it at different angles to the candlelight. The reflections seemed to respond to her gaze, almost as if the shards themselves recognized her and wanted to reveal their secrets. There was a strange intelligence in the fragments, an unspoken message waiting to be deciphered. She realized that her sister's act of destruction, while cruel and meant to assert dominance, had inadvertently exposed something her family had desperately tried to conceal. The shards were not merely broken pieces of glass, they were fragments of a larger truth, a hidden story woven into the fabric of her household for reasons she had yet to understand. As she examined the glimmers more closely, her intuition sharpened. One shard reflected an image of a chest tucked behind the heavy drapery in her sister's room, an object she had never been allowed to touch. Another glint revealed a faint silhouette moving through a doorway she thought was empty. Each reflection, each distortion, carried hints of secrecy, betrayals, and hidden treasures, clues that had been obscured from her until now. The pieces, while shattered, seemed to create a puzzle only she could solve, and the realization filled her with a mixture of awe and determination. Her sister had believed she was simply breaking a mirror, erasing a reflection, and asserting superiority. What she did not anticipate was that the fragments themselves would guide the girl to truths long buried. The subtle glimmers were like breadcrumbs left by fate, each one leading closer to revelations her enemies feared would come to light. She felt a strange connection to the shards, a sense that they were aligned with her destiny, waiting for her to piece together the full picture. For hours she traced the glimmers, carefully turning each fragment in her hands, observing how the light shifted, how shadows moved, and how certain angles revealed more than the surface could show. The more she focused, the more the fragments spoke, not in words, but in silent, undeniable proof that something hidden existed, something powerful enough to change the balance of power in her family. The shards were guiding her, and she understood that they were the key to uncovering a secret her sister, and perhaps the entire household, had gone to great lengths to hide. By the time she finally set the fragments down, she knew that the broken mirror was no longer a symbol of humiliation. It was a guide, a revelation in pieces, and an invitation to uncover the hidden truths that could not remain buried any longer. That night, under the dim glow of a single oil lamp, she gathered the broken shards, spreading them carefully across the wooden floor. The room smelled faintly of smoke from the earlier fire, mixed with the metallic tang of shattered glass. Each fragment glinted faintly in the flickering light, and as she bent closer, her eyes widened in disbelief. The shards were no longer reflecting her own face, or even the familiar corners of her room. They were showing things that had been hidden from her eyes, secret moments that she had never witnessed. In one shard, she saw her sister speaking quietly to a cloaked figure in the dead of night, exchanging a small object that sparkled like a gem. The figure's face was hidden, but the movement was deliberate, urgent, as if they were conspiring to keep something from her. Another shard reflected a scene from the kitchen, where a servant whispered hurriedly to someone standing behind the pantry door, eyes darting nervously as they passed a rolled parchment. Her stomach tightened. These were things she had never known, events taking place right under her nose, shielded by the assumption that she was unaware. The shards seemed to respond to her concentration. Tilting one slightly, she saw her sister's hand gesture in patterns that matched the symbols she had glimpsed earlier in the glimmers, a kind of silent language meant only for the eyes of the conspirators. In another piece, she glimpsed whispered instructions being given about her, plans designed to keep her in ignorance, to manipulate and control her life. Each reflection was like a window into a hidden world, one that moved behind the facade of family harmony, secrecy, and control. Her heartbeat raced as she traced the images, connecting them in her mind. The mirror, now broken and scattered, had become a lens into truth, revealing not just hidden actions but the very intentions behind them. She realized that the fragments were showing her the lies that had been spun to maintain appearances, the covert schemes her sister and others had enacted to diminish her power, her dignity, and her rightful place in the household. Even small gestures, the lowering of eyes, the tightening of lips, the careful placement of hands, told her volumes. Each secret meeting, each whispered conversation, each hidden act now appeared in vivid detail across the glass, as if the shards themselves could not tolerate the concealment any longer. As the hours passed, she began to understand patterns, recognizing repeated behaviors and familiar faces in the reflections. She could see who was loyal, who was deceitful, and who had been quietly complicit in hiding the truth from her. The shards revealed an intricate web of alliances and betrayals, showing her the inner workings of a household she had once trusted implicitly. Her mind raced with the implications, what these secrets meant for her, and how she might use the knowledge wisely to protect herself and assert the justice she deserved. Yet, amid the shock and awe, there was a strange sense of empowerment. The shards, though broken, were telling her the story she had been denied. They whispered of truths she could not have learned otherwise, of hidden dangers and unseen protectors, and of her own latent abilities to perceive what others sought to conceal. She realized that the mirror's destruction had not weakened her. It had given her eyes to see what no ordinary reflection could reveal. By the time dawn approached, she had studied every fragment, memorized patterns, and traced each clandestine act in her mind. The whispers within the glass were clear now. Knowledge is power, and even in shattered pieces, the truth finds a way to reveal itself. The girl sat back, exhausted yet electrified, knowing that the mirror's shards had given her something far greater than vanity, They had given her foresight, insight, and the first real understanding of the dangerous world she inhabited. As she arranged the shards on the floor, tilting each one carefully in the flickering light, the reflections began to align in her mind. They were not random flashes or fleeting images. They were pieces of a puzzle that, once assembled in her imagination, revealed a story that no one had dared tell her. At first, the fragments seemed disconnected. A hand reaching for a locked drawer, a whispered conversation behind a closed door, a furtive exchange of coins or letters. But as she studied them, she began to see the threads connecting every action, every glance, every secretive gesture. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and revelation, for what she was seeing was far greater than mere sibling rivalry. It was a network of betrayal that had festered silently for years. One shard showed her sister speaking urgently to a neighbor, delivering false reports about her behavior, exaggerating minor mistakes, and framing them as evidence of disobedience. Another fragment reflected a scene in which the family accountant, under her sister's instructions, was quietly redirecting resources, hiding assets, and altering records to erase her mother's contributions and ensure her own dominance. Each image, each angle, revealed deliberate actions meant to consolidate power and suppress the girl's rightful place. It was a web of manipulation so intricate that even a casual observer would have missed it, but the broken mirror captured the truth in ways words or hearsay never could. The most shocking revelation came from a shard that reflected an event she had never known. A night when a hidden document, perhaps a will or a record of inheritance, had been stolen and hidden away. In the reflection, she could see her sister carefully replacing the original with a falsified version, ensuring that no one could trace the rightful ownership. The act was silent, unnoticed by anyone else, but the mirror fragment had captured it as though the glass itself could not allow injustice to go unseen. The girl's breath caught in her throat as the enormity of the betrayal sank in. Her own blood, driven by jealousy, had conspired to erase her legacy, to rewrite her family's history for selfish gain. Even more unsettling were the fragments that revealed the subtle complicity of others in the household. Servants, friends, and extended family members appeared in the reflections, exchanging knowing glances or facilitating deceit. Their ordinary appearances hid the truth of their involvement, but the shards exposed it all, leaving no room for doubt. The girl realized that her sister's ambitions were supported by a network of silent accomplices who had, over time, allowed falsehoods and secrecy to overshadow justice and integrity. It was a dangerous knowledge, capable of shaking the household to its core if revealed. Despite the fear that coursed through her veins, she also felt a strange surge of empowerment. The mirror, though shattered, had revealed what no conversation, no confession, and no observation could have exposed. She understood now that knowledge was her weapon, and with it came responsibility. The betrayal, the secret dealings, the crime, each piece of evidence reflected in the shards, was a path toward justice, but only if she moved carefully. The power balance her sister had meticulously constructed was vulnerable now, and she had the insight to exploit it without falling prey to rash actions or impulsive reactions. She traced each action in her mind, imagining the sequence of events as a living story, a play in which she now knew the hidden scripts. The fragments formed a map, not of geography but of intentions, lies, and concealed truths. Every movement of her sister, every shadowed meeting, every whispered plan could now be accounted for, and the girl understood that the household's dominance depended on the continued ignorance of its rightful heir. That ignorance was gone, replaced by piercing clarity, insight, and the opportunity to reclaim what was hers by right. As dawn approached, she sat among the shards, exhausted but unbroken. The mirror had been broken, but in its fragments lay a revelation powerful enough to challenge her sister and all who had conspired against her. The hidden truths were no longer hidden. They were visible, undeniable, and alive in the reflections of shattered glass, waiting for her to act with wisdom, patience, and courage. She realized for the first time that the destruction meant to harm her had become her greatest advantage. In that quiet morning light, she understood the true power of observation, the strength in patience, and the inevitability of truth, no matter how deeply it had been buried. As she continued to study the shattered fragments, she began to notice patterns beyond the immediate betrayals. The glimmers within the glass were not only revealing her sister's secret dealings, they seemed to carry something older, something deliberate and intentional from long before her own lifetime. Tiny, almost imperceptible marks, scratches, and distortions in the mirror reflected more than just the present. They hinted at messages, carefully placed and hidden, left behind by ancestors or previous guardians who had protected the family's secrets for generations. These subtle messages, she realized with growing awe, were not random. They were instructions, warnings, and guidance meant to aid her in navigating the treacherous path she now faced. At first, the messages were cryptic. A shard reflected the flicker of an old emblem on the wall, a family crest she had barely recognized in childhood, but in the glass it seemed to pulse faintly with light. The crest, intertwined with symbolic shapes, seemed to point her attention to objects, spaces, and even gestures she had previously ignored. Another fragment revealed a reflection of a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards, one she had walked over countless times without noticing. The mirrors, broken though they were, appeared to amplify details that her ordinary eyes would have overlooked, and she felt the quiet thrill of discovery ripple through her. Some messages were even more subtle. She saw the shadows of hands tracing certain patterns in the air, as if guiding her to focus on particular symbols or motions. The angles of the shards emphasized certain letters or numbers carved into the floor, the beams of the ceiling, or the folds of fabric in old tapestries. She realized these hints were left by those who had understood the family's vulnerabilities, ancestors who had faced threats to their legacy, and who had prepared tools of guidance for the rightful heir. The shards were like a living diary, speaking across generations, offering both instruction and reassurance. As she pieced the fragments together, she noticed that the messages also contained warnings. One reflection showed her sister holding a document, while a faint inscription appeared in the background, a note from a previous guardian cautioning the heir about deceit, manipulation, and the precise ways in which adversaries might attempt to exploit her ignorance. Another shard displayed an image of a lockbox with faint carvings that, when viewed correctly, spelled out the instructions to access it, including the precise sequence needed to avoid triggering traps or revealing the box prematurely. The girl understood that these were not random. They were a carefully constructed network of guidance designed to protect knowledge and inheritance that was rightfully hers. The mirrors seemed to respond to her presence, almost as if they recognized her as the one they had waited for. Shadows shifted and lines of light pointed subtly toward objects and locations she had ignored in the past. Each shard added clarity, and the hidden messages began to form a coherent path, a sequence of steps she needed to follow to uncover the full truth safely, to expose the betrayal without jeopardizing herself, and to secure the legacy that had been denied to her. She realized that the mirrors had not only reflected what was happening in her lifetime, they had preserved the wisdom of those who came before her, allowing the past to intervene in the present. Hours passed as she traced the reflections and interpreted the symbols, noticing that even small details, the tilt of a shard, the faint glimmer in a crack, carried meaning. A streak of light, when caught from the right angle, highlighted a secret inscription along the frame of the mirror, guiding her to a set of hidden keys. Another fragment reflected a faded message on the wall that was invisible by daylight but became clear in the lamp's flicker, offering advice on how to approach her sister without endangering herself while still claiming what was hers. Amidst the revelations, she felt a growing sense of connection with those who had come before her. The ancestors, the guardians of family secrets, had left these messages deliberately for a time such as this. She realized that she was not acting alone. She had the accumulated wisdom of generations guiding her, a network of silent protectors whose voices reached her through the fractured glass. The mirror, once a tool of vanity and then an instrument of humiliation, had become a conduit for wisdom, strategy, and foresight. By the time she had examined every fragment and pieced together the patterns, she understood the full scope of what lay before her. The messages left behind were instructions not just for survival, but for justice, for reclaiming her power, and for exposing those who sought to deceive. They showed her the ways in which the truth could be revealed safely, how the betrayal could be confronted, and how she could preserve her family's honor while asserting her rightful position. Sitting among the shards, surrounded by the faint glow of candlelight, she realized that the broken mirror had transformed her understanding. The subtle messages hidden in the reflections were more than guidance. They were a legacy of care, vigilance, and strategic foresight. She felt a quiet, resolute determination, knowing that she was ready to act with intelligence, courage, and patience. The mirror had shown her not only the hidden truths of the present, but the path to reclaiming the past and securing the future. The next morning, she sought out the confidant she had long trusted, an elder of the village, wise beyond measure, whose eyes seemed to perceive not only the world as it was but as it had always been. The elder's presence carried authority, calm, and patience, and she approached with a mixture of reverence and urgency. As she laid out the shards before the elder, she watched carefully for any signs of recognition, any flicker that might indicate awareness of the truths the broken mirror had revealed. The elder's eyes widened slightly at the sight, but there was no surprise in their expression, only a quiet acknowledgement. Slowly, deliberately, the confidant bent closer, examining the fragments with a practiced gaze. "You have seen what was meant to remain hidden," the elder said softly, their voice steady but carrying weight. "These shards are not merely broken glass. They are witnesses. They have preserved what your sister and others tried to conceal, capturing acts of betrayal and secrecy with an accuracy that few could hope to perceive." She explained what she had seen, pointing out the meetings, the whispered conversations, and the subtle gestures that betrayed hidden alliances. The elder nodded as she spoke, confirming the validity of each observation. "You are correct," they said, "and the scope of what has been concealed is greater than you might imagine. The fragments have shown only part of a larger pattern. There are decisions made, loyalties betrayed, and truths suppressed that stretch back years, all to maintain control and prevent the rightful heir from rising." The confidant went on to describe the implications of these revelations. "Your sister and her accomplices have relied on fear and ignorance to enforce their dominance. They have hidden documents, altered records, and manipulated those around them. The broken mirror has revealed a small window into their world, but you must understand, what you have seen carries consequences. Acting without caution could provoke retaliation, expose you prematurely, or allow them to conceal their tracks further." Despite the gravity of the warning, there was a spark of encouragement in the elder's tone. "Yet there is hope. You have the knowledge that has been denied to you, the clarity that comes from observation, and the guidance that has been left by those who came before. With patience, strategy, and wisdom, you can reclaim what is rightfully yours, expose the deceit, and restore the balance that has been so violently disrupted." The girl listened intently, absorbing every word, understanding that the elder's counsel was as vital as the revelations in the mirror. The confidant emphasized the importance of discretion, the need to act deliberately, and the power of subtle influence. "You are not merely confronting your sister," the elder said. "You are confronting a network of deception. Every step must be measured, every move calculated, and every ally understood. The mirror has given you insight, but it is your courage and intelligence that will determine the outcome." As the conversation continued, the elder revealed practical guidance. They described the significance of certain artifacts, the hidden messages she had glimpsed in the reflections, and the ways in which those clues could be used to expose the truth without endangering herself. They spoke of timing, observation, and the value of patience, reinforcing that the power she had discovered was not meant for reckless display but for carefully executed strategy. By the end of their meeting, the girl felt a mix of clarity and determination. The shards had shown her the scope of betrayal, but the confidant had illuminated the path forward, offering both perspective and reassurance. She now understood the full weight of the knowledge she possessed and the responsibilities that came with it. She was no longer merely a witness, she was an active participant in the unfolding story, guided by ancestral wisdom, empowered by insight, and supported by a trusted ally who could help her navigate the dangers ahead. Leaving the elder's presence, she carried with her a renewed sense of purpose. The confidant's affirmation had strengthened her resolve, confirming that the truths revealed by the broken mirror were real, consequential, and actionable. She was ready to plan, to act, and to confront the deception that had long sought to suppress her. In that moment, she understood the delicate balance between revelation and strategy, and the crucial role of guidance in turning knowledge into power. Even after hours of studying the shards and absorbing the elder's counsel, she felt an unease that gnawed at her. Something remained unresolved, a gap in the mosaic of revelations. The fragments had shown her betrayals, secret dealings, and hidden alliances, but a pattern still eluded her understanding, a missing link that could connect the scattered pieces and illuminate the full scope of the deception. She sensed instinctively that until she discovered this final piece, the truth would remain incomplete, and any action she took could be flawed or premature. The realization came subtly, like a whisper carried on the wind. A reflection of a corner of the room, previously unnoticed, revealed a faint outline beneath the floorboards, a shadow that the broken glass had accentuated without her initially comprehending its significance. Her heart quickened as she recognized that this could be the clue she had been missing, the concealed object or hidden compartment that would unify all the fragments' revelations into a single, coherent truth. Every betrayal, every lie, every manipulated action she had observed seemed to point toward this unseen nexus, as though all the hidden maneuvers had been orchestrated to shield it from her eyes. She began to search carefully, guided by intuition and the subtle instructions embedded in the mirror's messages. Each shard she examined seemed to lead her closer, highlighting corners, cracks, and faint carvings that had been overlooked. The floorboards creaked under her weight as she traced the outlines revealed in the reflections, noting the faint discoloration of one particular section, a subtle irregularity that suggested something had been deliberately concealed. She paused, taking a moment to listen to the quiet of the room, attuning herself to every sound and shadow, every possibility that had previously escaped attention. When she finally removed the floorboard, she uncovered a small, hidden compartment. Inside lay a collection of papers and objects, meticulously arranged and preserved as though anticipating her eventual discovery. A letter, sealed and bearing a familiar family mark, revealed instructions and confessions long withheld. Another document outlined the true ownership of land, inheritance and ancestral artifacts, directly linking the acts of deceit and betrayal she had seen in the mirror shards to the ultimate purpose of her sister and accomplices, the erasure of her claim and the consolidation of power. A small box, containing keys, talismans or other symbolic objects, tied together the pieces of knowledge, showing how each act she had observed had been designed to conceal the presence and significance of this final treasure. As she examined each item, she understood why her sister had been so desperate to control appearances, manipulate allies and eliminate witnesses. Every act of cruelty and deception was designed to shield this missing link from discovery. The broken mirror had been a silent witness, providing fragments of information and subtle guidance, but it had been incomplete without the physical evidence or hidden chamber that tied everything together. Now, with the discovery in her hands, the narrative became complete. The cause of her suffering, the network of deceit, and the rightful inheritance were all aligned in a single, undeniable truth. The weight of this revelation was immense. She realized that the missing link not only confirmed the observations from the mirror shards but also empowered her with irrefutable evidence. The letters and objects contained information that could expose every lie, every betrayal, and every hidden alliance. Her sister's manipulations were no longer concealed in shadows or whispered secrets. They were documented, tangible, and undeniable. The hidden chamber had preserved a legacy, safeguarded by her ancestors, waiting for her to uncover it and claim her rightful place. The discovery also brought clarity to the ancestral guidance embedded in the mirror fragments. The subtle messages, the faint glimmers, and the whispers within the glass had all pointed toward this missing link, but they could only do so much without her active search. The combination of ancestral wisdom, careful observation, and patient discernment had led her to this moment. She felt a profound connection to the generations before her, a recognition that their foresight had prepared her not only to survive the betrayals but to reclaim what was rightfully hers with both wisdom and authority. With the missing link now uncovered, she could see the full picture. The mirror fragments reflected the past actions and current threats, the elder confirmed the stakes and offered guidance, and the hidden documents and objects completed the chain, revealing the ultimate truth of her lineage, inheritance, and the consequences of deception. The puzzle was no longer fragmented. Every betrayal, every secret meeting, every act of cruelty now made sense in the larger context. She understood the depth of the power struggle, the meticulous planning behind her suffering, and the full scope of the justice that was now within her grasp. For the first time, she felt the weight of both responsibility and empowerment. The missing link had transformed the scattered, partial revelations into a comprehensive understanding, giving her the means to act decisively. She knew now that she could confront the deceit, expose the conspirators, and restore the balance of her household. The knowledge of the hidden chamber, the documents, and the symbolic objects offered her not only insight but authority, the ultimate leverage to turn suffering into justice, observation into strategy, and patience into triumph. Late one evening, while moving quietly through the corridors of her home, she found herself near the room where her sister and the co-conspirators had gathered. The door was slightly ajar, the candlelight flickering within, casting long shadows on the walls. She paused, careful not to make a sound, and leaned closer, her heart hammering with anticipation and a hint of dread. The fragments of the broken mirror, the guidance from the elder, and the discovery of the hidden chamber had prepared her for this moment. Now she would hear the conspirators' voices unfiltered, revealing what they truly feared. Her sister's voice rose first, sharp with anger and frustration. "I don't understand why she has been looking so intently at those old papers and fragments. We've done everything we can, destroyed her mirror, burned the belongings, hidden the letters, but she seems to know." There was a tremor in her tone, a crack in the facade of confidence she had always projected. The girl's heart skipped a beat as she realized the weight of the fear in her sister's voice. They were panicked, and this panic would be her advantage. Another voice joined in, lower and more calculated, that of a co-conspirator who had aided in the suppression of her claims. "We can't let her discover the chamber. If she finds the documents, the relic, or the instructions, it will expose everything. The inheritance, the secrets, the way we've manipulated the household. She must not get to it first. The words were chilling in their clarity. Every action, every cruelty she had endured, had been aimed at preventing her from finding the missing link that now rested safely in her hands. She remained silent, pressing closer to the doorway without letting her presence betray itself. Her mind raced, cataloging every detail, every admission. The conspirators spoke of their previous attempts, of the burned belongings, the destroyed mirror, the distractions and threats used to intimidate her. Each confession confirmed the truths she had pieced together from the shards and the hidden chamber, validating her suspicions and clarifying the magnitude of the deception. A particularly revealing moment came when her sister said, almost in desperation, "We must monitor her every move. She cannot be allowed to approach the chamber or see what the elder has told her. If she gains knowledge of the relic or the map, everything we've worked for will collapse." The girl's hands clenched with quiet satisfaction. They feared her insight and the power that knowledge would grant her. For so long they had relied on intimidation and secrecy, but now she had both, proof and understanding. Every whispered plan, every furtive glance they mentioned, and every admission of past fear illuminated their vulnerability. They believed themselves cunning, but in truth they were exposed. The eavesdropping confirmed what the mirror shards and the hidden chamber had hinted at. They were desperate to keep her in the dark because they feared her awakening would undo all their manipulations. Their own words, spoken carelessly, revealed the structure of their deceit and the points of weakness she could exploit. As she stepped back from the doorway, heart pounding yet steady with purpose, she realized the full value of what she had just learned. The eavesdropping had provided clarity and strategy, confirming her role as the one who held the ultimate knowledge. They had revealed their fear without knowing she had become the very threat they sought to prevent. She now understood exactly what she was up against and how much leverage she had, and the knowledge would guide her next moves, allowing her to confront the deceit with precision, authority, and the satisfaction of knowing she had turned their own secrecy against them. After overhearing the conspirators and confirming the hidden truths, she withdrew to a quiet space, her mind sharp and focused. The fragments of the broken mirror, the hidden chamber, and the Elders' Council had all revealed pieces of a larger puzzle, and now she needed to weave them into a coherent strategy. She knew that acting impulsively could expose her prematurely or provoke retaliation. Every step needed to be deliberate, calculated, and precise, ensuring she could confront the deceit, reclaim her rightful place, and bring justice without placing herself in unnecessary danger. She began by organizing the knowledge she had gathered. The mirror fragments had shown her the secret alliances, betrayals, and subtle manipulations, while the hidden chamber provided tangible evidence, documents, relics, and symbols validating her heritage and claim. The Elder's guidance had taught her the importance of patience, timing, and the careful orchestration of each action. With these components, she sketched the outline of her plan mentally, deciding on the sequence in which she would reveal truths, approach allies, and confront the conspirators. Her first consideration was observation. She needed to understand the daily routines, patterns, and behaviors of her sister and co-conspirators. The more she knew, the better she could anticipate their reactions. She spent hours watching quietly, noting the times when doors were unlocked, when allies were absent, and when private conversations were likely to occur. Every gesture, every pause, every whispered word became a data point for her strategy. Patience was crucial. She knew that acting too early could allow the conspirators to hide evidence, destroy documents, or manipulate witnesses. Next, she mapped out the order in which the hidden truths would be revealed. The fragments of the mirror had already provided glimpses of their deceit, but she could not simply expose them without context. She needed to pair the observations with the documents from the hidden chamber, ensuring that every accusation or revelation was backed by indisputable proof. This combination would remove any chance of denial or manipulation. She also considered the presence of the confidant, the elder who had confirmed the truths. Their subtle support could lend credibility and guidance at critical moments. She then thought carefully about the confrontation itself. Her approach had to be controlled, authoritative, and strategic, emphasizing facts over emotion. She planned to let the conspirators reveal their own guilt through their reactions, using the hidden knowledge as a catalyst rather than a weapon. By creating situations where their deceit could no longer be hidden, she could expose them gradually and publicly, ensuring the truth would be undeniable. At the same time, she considered contingencies, ways to protect herself if they became aggressive, attempts to destroy evidence, or attempts to manipulate witnesses. Each possibility was accounted for in her strategy. Part of the plan also involved allies and observers. She identified trustworthy individuals who had influence or respect within the household or community. Their presence, discreet yet strategic, could amplify the impact of her revelations and prevent any attempts to discredit her. The goal was to create an environment where the conspirators could not escape scrutiny and where the truth would naturally assert itself without the need for force or confrontation. She also integrated the timing of her actions with symbolic and practical elements. The mirror shards, the hidden relics, and the ancestral messages provided both a roadmap and a framework for her strategy. By revealing certain truths at specific moments, she could maximize their impact, expose multiple layers of deceit simultaneously, and ensure that her authority and legitimacy were recognized. Patience, she reminded herself, was as powerful as courage. Acting prematurely could squander all the advantages she had painstakingly gathered. Finally, she rehearsed mentally the sequence of steps, anticipating reactions, testing contingencies, and adjusting her plan as new insights emerged. Every observation, every document, every reflection became part of a carefully constructed framework designed to reclaim what was hers and ensure justice prevailed. By the end of her preparation, she felt a sense of clarity, confidence, and empowerment. She had transformed knowledge into strategy, observation into opportunity, and patience into actionable power. The conspirators had underestimated her, and now, with a calculated plan in hand, she would ensure that their deceit could no longer withstand the truth. The strategic plan was not merely about revenge or exposure. It was about restoring balance, affirming her rightful position, and demonstrating that intelligence, foresight, and careful action could overcome years of manipulation and cruelty. She was ready, mentally and emotionally, to execute her plan with precision, to confront the lies, and to reclaim her legacy without endangering herself unnecessarily. Every move would be deliberate, every revelation intentional, and every action aimed at ensuring that the truth would emerge triumphant, and that the conspirators could no longer hide behind fear, secrecy, or manipulation. With her plan carefully mapped and contingencies in place, she moved forward cautiously, knowing the importance of patience and timing. The first confrontation would not be a full exposure. It would be a subtle, calculated assertion designed to gauge reactions, plant seeds of doubt, and test the true strength of her adversaries. She had learned that the conspirators were clever and manipulative, but she also knew that their fear of discovery could be leveraged to her advantage. Every step needed to be deliberate, every word measured, and every action layered with intent. She began by orchestrating small incidents that hinted at her awareness. A question posed innocently during a meal, a glance held a fraction too long, or a subtle reference to a shared memory that only someone aware of the hidden truths could make. Each gesture was designed to unsettle her sister and co-conspirators without revealing the full extent of her knowledge. She noticed almost immediately the subtle shifts in their expressions. A flicker of worry, a hesitation in speech, a careful choice of words where they had previously spoken freely. These reactions were confirmations that her suspicions had been accurate and that they were beginning to feel the pressure of her silent awareness. She also used the information she had gleaned from the mirror shards and hidden chamber to guide her interactions. Phrases, objects, or stories were referenced in ways that seemed casual, yet they carried layered meanings only she fully understood. For example, she might casually mention a detail from the ancestral documents or recall a lesson passed down from the elder, subtly reminding her sister that she was aware of the depth of the household's secrets. Each allusion was calculated to provoke unease, to hint at knowledge without triggering an overt confrontation that could backfire. At the same time, she observed carefully the reactions of others around her. The household staff, distant relatives, and even neighbors provided critical insight into how the conspirators behaved under scrutiny. She noted patterns, moments when her sister's confidence faltered, when co-conspirators spoke too quickly, or when they avoided direct eye contact. These observations informed her next moves and allowed her to adjust her strategy in real time. She realized that the smallest expressions, shifts in tone, subtle changes in posture, fleeting gestures, could reveal far more than words ever would. To safeguard her ultimate advantage, she kept her most critical knowledge concealed. She never revealed the discovery of the hidden chamber, the documents, or the full implications of the mirror fragments. Her actions were designed to appear intuitive, as if she were merely clever or perceptive, rather than fully informed. This careful concealment created a layer of protection, ensuring that even if her sister and co-conspirators suspected she knew more than she let on, they could not pinpoint the source or scope of her understanding. It was a delicate balance between asserting authority and maintaining secrecy, and she executed it with precision. Throughout the first confrontation she also tested alliances. Small gestures toward loyal staff or subtle inquiries allowed her to identify who could be trusted when the time came for full exposure. These quiet tests revealed potential allies and confirmed the isolation of the conspirators, ensuring that when the final confrontation occurred, she would not face opposition from unseen quarters. Every interaction was a probe, every conversation a miniature experiment to measure loyalty, fear, and resolve. By the end of this initial engagement she had achieved several objectives. She had asserted her presence and authority without revealing her full power, unsettled her sister and co-conspirators, and gathered critical intelligence on their current strategies and vulnerabilities. Most importantly, she had protected her ultimate advantage, the knowledge and evidence that would allow her to reclaim her rightful place and expose the truth fully. The first confrontation was a success not because of confrontation itself, but because it had been a calculated exercise in influence, observation, and control. She stepped back, confident yet poised, understanding that the next moves would build upon this foundation. The seeds of doubt had been sown, the reactions carefully measured, and the stage set for the eventual revelation. The first confrontation was never meant to end the struggle. It was the opening maneuver, executed with strategy, intelligence, and the subtle power of knowing more than her adversaries suspected. With patience and careful planning, she was now positioned to turn knowledge into action, and observation into undeniable authority. The moment of exposure arrived with a quiet intensity, unlike the subtle tests and calculated gestures of her first confrontation. She had gathered the fragments, pieced together the full picture from the mirror, and organized the evidence so that nothing could be denied or manipulated. The room was filled with familiar faces, family members, household staff, and a few neighbors, some curious, some unaware of the brewing tension. Her sister, confident until now, lingered at the center, unaware that the time for secrets and deception had ended. She began by speaking calmly, clearly, and deliberately, recounting events and observations that had seemed trivial or mysterious to others until now. Each detail aligned with the reflections she had studied, with the whispers and distortions hidden within the broken shards. She described meetings, hidden objects, and manipulations, naming specific times and places that could be verified. Her voice carried authority, measured and unwavering, leaving no room for dispute. She ensured that the words were supported by what others had witnessed, emphasizing patterns and consistencies that her sister could not challenge. As she revealed the truth, the reactions around her were immediate. Some gasped softly, others exchanged worried glances, and a few stepped closer to see the mirror fragments themselves, the tangible proof that corroborated her story. Her sister's composure began to falter as she realized the depth of the revelation and the impossibility of denying what had been presented. The careful manipulation, the hidden schemes, and the years of subtle intimidation were laid bare for everyone to see. The power of the mirror fragments became undeniable in that moment. They had preserved the truth in ways that no one could alter, and their reflections illustrated not only the actions of the conspirators but also the courage and patience of the girl who had pieced them together. Each shard seemed to shine with significance, revealing moments of deception, betrayal, and hidden agendas that had previously gone unnoticed. The evidence was irrefutable, and the witnesses could see, with their own eyes, the pattern of lies that had been woven against her. Her sister tried to interject, to offer explanations to soften the accusations, but the clarity of the evidence left no room for manipulation. Every denial rang hollow, every attempt at diversion was neutralized by the consistency and completeness of the revelations. The household, once steeped in secrecy and fear, now held a mirror to the truth, reflecting it unflinchingly to all present. The power dynamics had shifted. The one who had been silenced, undermined, and humiliated now held the undeniable authority. By the time she finished, the atmosphere had changed entirely. Witnesses who had been uncertain now understood the full scope of the deception. The balance, once tipped in favor of secrecy and control, was restored. Her sister's schemes had unraveled under the weight of truth, and the household could no longer ignore the integrity, patience, and intelligence that had brought this exposure to light. Justice was not a sudden eruption but a careful unveiling, a demonstration that the smallest reflections, when observed with clarity and courage, could reveal the deepest truths and correct the injustices hidden in shadow.